Hey guys, welcome back. In this video, we're going to talk about string formatting and manipulation. When writing an application, we often need to change the way a string looks before we present it to the user. There are many different ways we can do this, so let's take a look at a couple. So first, we'll create a string variable. I'll just call it text, and I'll set it equal to Eastwood developers. Now I'll do console.writeLine and put the text inside. So some common things we might want to do would be to make the text all uppercase or all lowercase. This could be useful if we're checking against some user input maybe, and we don't care if they capitalized any of the letters. We can then check to see if we make it all uppercase or all lowercase, we can then check against them. So to do that, you take your text variable and you write dot, and you can see all the different things we can do on a string. And what we're looking for is to upper, and we have to put two parentheses just like this, and that's it. And now it'll print in uppercase. Of course, we can also do to lower, and again, make sure there's parentheses. Another common thing you might have to do is trim the text. So let's say there were some extra spaces here, and maybe even some spaces in the beginning. We could do text.trim, and you can see that there's trim, trim end, and trim start. Trim end will remove the spaces at the end, trim start in the beginning, and trim would do both. So in this case, I would do trim. And so now just to show the trim at the end, I'm going to change this from console.writeLine to console.write. This will print a line to the console, but will not return a new line. It'll just stay on the same line. So I'm going to add one more console.write and put some additional text. And this is only just so you'll be able to actually see the trim at the end. Otherwise, you wouldn't actually see anything, whether there's spaces or not. So I'll hit start. And here you can see that even though I had spaces in my string, the trim took the spaces out at the beginning and at the end, but it left the space in the middle. So it's only going to do the beginning and the end of the string. It's going to leave any spaces in the middle. Another cool thing you can do is you can replace within a string. So let's say I get rid of these extra spaces here and we get rid of this extra console.write. We can do text.replace and put our parentheses, and inside the parentheses we could give it what string we want to replace and the new string that we want to replace it with. So if I just wanted to say get rid of this space here between Eastwood and developers, I could replace the string space with nothing. And so now I've replaced it with nothing, and that got rid of the space in between. You could also replace just part of a word. So I could replace the word east with the word west. And if I run now, it'll say Westwood developers. Another thing you'll see if we do text dot is the first thing that comes up is length. And we can get the length of the string. So if we do this, we could see that there's 19 characters inside of this string. Everything here is a character. And characters are actually another data type that we can use. And it's represented by the keyword char. So char character. And just like a string, we use quotations, but we use single quotations instead of double. So character A, this would be a valid character. If I tried to use string, if double quotations, it won't work because it's not a string, it's a character. Now the reason I mention this is that a string can actually be looked at as an array of characters. So we already know there's 19 characters in this array. So if I did text brackets just like an array and put an index number, I'll actually get the character value. So I should get E, because E is the first element in our string array and its index is 0. So we should just get E. Now that we see how a string is just a character array, we could do something like text.substring. And substring, as you can see, will retrieve a substring from the string that we get. So it starts at a specified character position and continues to the end of the string. So for example, if we just do substring 4, we're going to get the fourth index, so 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, so it's going to be this W. It's going to take everything after and return a new string that we're going to print out starting from wood. And we can control that if we did 4 and we put a comma inside of these parentheses, these first parentheses next to substring, we could put how many characters we want to go. So if I did something like 5, it's going to start just at the beginning of this W and go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and stop right here. So whichever index we are on, it's going to start, you can almost think of it as it starts the cursor right before it and goes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And this is what it's going to print out. The next thing I want to show real quick is the remove command. So we can do remove, and again, takes a starting index and a count for how many characters it's going to go. So we could do the same thing like we did, 4, 5, and it's going to remove 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So it should just say East developers with no space. Another thing we often have to do is insert variables into a string. So I'm going to delete this string altogether. And I'm just going to delete everything in this console.write. I'll just make it empty so we don't get the error. And I'm going to create a couple of variables. So I'll do a string name and I'll set it to Bob. And I can do something just simple like string day of week, and we'll call it, Wednesday. It's not really Wednesday today, it's Sunday, but that's okay. Maybe you're watching this on a Wednesday. So if I wanted to print something out like, "Hi Bob, welcome to Eastwood Developers, thanks for coming on this beautiful Wednesday," we could do something like, "Hi," and then use string concatenation, which we've talked about in earlier videos, to do name, and then we can say plus, and we can add another, and we could say, give it maybe an exclamation point, and then welcome to Eastwood Developers. If I could spell, thank you for visiting us on this beautiful, and then we can do another string concatenation, and we can put day of week as the variable, and that'll be it. That'll be our string. And of course, this will work. And while it works, you can imagine that if you had a lot of variables that you needed to plug into this sentence, then it's going to get really cumbersome quickly to have to do this and remember all your spacing. Make sure you put a space here. That's not very manageable. So another thing we can do is let's get rid of everything that's concatenated. And we'll get rid of these extra quotations. So everything is just one long string here. So instead of concatenation, anytime we want to put a variable, we can use two curly braces and use an index number. So we start with 0. Here I want to put another one at the end for the day of week, and I'll use 1. Then after our string is over, we can put a comma and we can add the variables that we want to use to fill in order all of these index numbers. So the first one would be name, and the second one would be day of week. And I don't know why I capitalized this, but that's okay. This will work exactly the same. And what's cool about this is it allows you to keep working kind of within the string. Now I can add a period at the end. I don't have to add a plus with a concatenation just to add a little period. But we end up with these kind of weird placeholders, and then we have to go to the end and figure out what variables they're actually calling, and it's not super convenient. This method using these placeholders is called composite formatting. However, in later versions of C#, we now have something called string interpolation. So if we get rid of these variables at the end, and we get rid of our curly braces with our placeholders, what we could do is at the very beginning of a string, we can put a $sign. And by using this $sign, we can now put curly braces, and you see that it's not the color of the string anymore. Now we can put our variables directly in, and we can do this. This is much more readable, and this makes your strings really nice to work with. You can easily read this. Hi, name. Welcome to Eastwood developers. Thank you for visiting us on this beautiful day of week. And this is very readable. You don't have to jump to the end and figure out what variables are being used. This is my preferred method. I use this as much as possible. One last thing that you should know is that there is an escape key. It is a / key. It'll allow us to do some special functionality. If I do \n, I'll actually get a new line. So even though I'm in a console.write, I should get a new line right here. See? So it brought it down to the next line. Another thing you should be aware of is that if your string contains a / that you actually want to see, so maybe like a URL or something, you would have to put 2 \. This now will show 1 single slash in your string. So keep that in mind for URLs. One way to avoid that is if you put before the string an @ symbol. By putting this @ symbol, this is now a literal string. So the escape characters will no longer work, and it will print everything literally. So the last thing I want to talk to you guys about is the toString command. And this is used to convert just about anything, any object, into a string. And an object is something we're going to talk about later, but just know for now that pretty much any of these variables we create, an int, a bool, anything would be an object, and we can call this toString command. Now when we put something inside of our console.write, and I'm gonna just delete this. If we were to just put a number inside our console.write, even though it was expecting a string, it'll work because it will convert the number to a string automatically for us. However, there will be cases where that's not always going to be possible, especially when we get into writing our own methods, which we're going to see in the next video. Sometimes we just need to convert something to a string. So simply put, on any number or a variable of an integer or just about any object really, and again, object is something we'll talk about later, we can do .toString and put in our parentheses here. This will convert this integer to a string. And again, remember, it can be used on other data types as well. Right now I'm just using a simple number. One more cool thing about toString that you can do is inside the parentheses we can actually put a special string that will tell it to give us some special output. So for example, if we wanted currency, I could put C2 inside of these parentheses, inside of a string. And when I do that, it's going to print 6 as a currency. So the C stands for currency. So this is just one example. There are several others. Don't worry about it too much right now. I just kind of wanted to show you that this exists. And this is a nice, quick, easy way to get currency. This is currency with 2 decimal points. So you're going to see $6 with 2 decimal points. And there you go. So toString is very useful. Right now, inside of these console.write and write lines, it's not going to be as useful because it's automatically converting it to a string for me. But when you want to do things like currency, and when we get into writing methods, which we'll see in the next video, it's not always going to automatically convert for you. So you have to make sure if it's expecting a string, you have to give it a string specifically. So not everything is going to be able to auto convert like that. All right, so that about wraps it up for this video. There are a few other ways that you can manipulate strings and format strings, but I just wanted to touch on a few that I like and I think you should know. And again, there's more to learn, of course. The more you play with it, the more you look through the IntelliSense and see some of the options of things that you could do, you start to figure out how to use them in different ways. But this was just a basics on a couple of different things, and I hope you got something from it. So we'll be back in the next one soon. Stay tuned. Thanks a lot for watching, and take care.